Okay, hello everybody. We have all of zero people in our audience, which is exciting. We will not be criticized, uh, but I'm sure we'll get some more people signing up here and joining us. Um, welcome to today, July 15th, 2018. I'm proud to be with my special guest and dear friend and wonderful colleague, Mike Christensen. And we're going to be taking a deeper dive on the disarming technique today. That's one of the 5 secrets of effective communication. And the disarming technique is the most important of the 5 secrets of effective communication by far, but it's also incredibly challenging to learn, and people have a lot of resistance to learning it. But what it is, it's a fabulous tool to use among other tools, other of the 5 secrets of effective communication, when you're criticized. And the idea of it is to find truth in a criticism. And it's based on what I call the law of opposites. And we've been over this before, but I'll just give you a little bit of a quick review. That the law of opposites, and this is a psychological principle, it's also, I would say, arguably a philosophical or Buddhist or spiritual principle. And it's when someone criticizes you, I would say 99% of the time, we human beings get defensive. And we argue and point out why the other person is wrong or why what we did was okay. And typically the conflict escalates, and that's because of the law of opposites. And the law of opposites states that if you defend yourself that is true, unfair, you'll instantly confirm that the criticism is true and will believe more, believe their criticism of you. And that's a paradox. See, when you defend yourself and try to point out that someone's criticism is false, you'll make them even more convinced that their criticism is true, and they'll be right. Your defense will, in fact, prove that they're right. And I'll give you an example of this in just a moment. And then I'll come to the point of today's show, why we're taking a deeper dive on this technique. The opposite of the law of opposites is another paradox, and it's if you instantly and genuinely agree that somebody's false criticism of you is absolutely true, and you really mean it, the moment you agree with them, they'll instantly stop believing what they said to you. So that's the other side of the paradox. If you agree with somebody's criticism, they'll stop believing it. Even if it's a false criticism, they'll stop believing it. But you have to see the truth in what they're saying, and that has to come from the heart. Now, we will give examples of this, a lot of examples on today's show, but the purpose of today's show was because people have all kinds of resistance to using the disarming technique. And of course, no one's obligated to do it, just a tool. It's a mind-blowing, life-changing tool that you can pick up and use and work on and learn to use if you're highly motivated to do that and to react to people who criticize you, people you're in conflict with, to react to them in a different way that will transform conflict into intimacy and trust and joy and close, rewarding relationships. But it seems so simple, the disarming technique. We'll give you an example, we'll bring it to life, and it kind of seems simple, but then people start putting up resistance. And one of the big resistances that people put up is, well, how can I agree with someone's criticism when the criticism isn't true? And so the purpose of today's broadcast, among others, is to show you with specific real examples of people who thought someone was criticizing them in a way that couldn't be true, that all of these criticisms contain not only a grain of truth, but a Mount Everest of truth. And the moment you acknowledge the truth, the whole thing will fall apart like a house of cards, and they won't believe it anymore. So that's all kind of abstract, and we're going to bring it down to the specific. before we dive in, should we give a quick Whistler report, Mike?
Yeah, that would be great. We, David and I were in Whistler just a little over a week ago and had arguably one of the most kind of mind-blowing 4-day intensives that I've ever been a part of. We had a wonderful live volunteer, and David, I have to say, you were just on fire. Your delivery was masterful, and just it was so much fun to be hanging out with you there. And I understand the feedback that we got back from the participants was some of the best you've ever received. And so you're like fine wine, just getting better.
Well, thank you. It was a joy working with you, but it was the highest workshop rating that I've ever had in the past 30 years. And it wasn't just slightly better. It was like 2 standard deviations above any rating that I've had. And I'm going to try to do that at the San Francisco workshop as well. The intensive coming up in a couple of weeks. I'll give out a phone number on that if anyone is interested in attending that intensive. But it was just a phenomenal experience. And Jack Hiroshi, who sponsored it, said it was actually absolutely the highest workshop rating he's seen in his entire career of doing hundreds and hundreds of workshops in Canada. And part of it really was, I would have to say, Mike, the disarming technique. I was super determined to treat every person in the audience with warmth, with respect, and to find truth and importance in what everyone was saying, no matter what. And that really helped to create a climate of warmth and trust. Well, should we start out with this scathing letter I got of criticizing me?
Sure. Can I throw one more thing in? Looks like we've got a couple of our Whistler participants have joined online, and then I just thought, we best throw a quick shout out to Dipti. She's one of our Facebook followers as well, and she joined us to Dipti from India.
Is Dipti here?
I don't know if she's here, but she.
Oh, yeah. She came all the way from India with her beautiful daughter. It was fantastic. And then we have someone here from Whistler, Kathy Fenn, says Whistler was amazing. Thank you for that. Angela, Whistler was awesome. Angela says, so excited to see you today. Kathy, hi, David and Mike. Good to see you today. So how neat that you guys are joining us. Oh, and then let's see, Angela, Dr. Burns, you're not centered in the camera. I should be centered now, but I can easily change if I'm not. Do I look centered to you, Mike?
Oh, that looks better. Yes. Yeah.
And
thanks for that excellent critique.
And Lisa says, yes, the disarming technique is indeed mind-blowing. Lisa says tech problems. I'm not sure what that means.
I think we were a little fuzzy for a minute, but you're coming through nice and clear now.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And then Bernie, I got a letter from Bernie that I'll read too. Let me read the positive letter before I read the negative letter.
Yes,
because that'll get my spirits up a bit before I experience the death of the ego. Because I got blasted by somebody, and I encourage criticism, so I really have to use the disarming technique and try to learn from criticism rather than getting defensive. But my Tuesday tip of the week, I don't know how many of you read my Tuesday tip, but there's a kind of a paradoxical tip that I publish on my website on Tuesdays, and then people try to figure out what it means, and then I give the solution on Wednesday. And my Tuesday tip this week was all about, some people say that psychotherapy just consists of codependent schmoozing, where you go to a therapist and you talk and talk and talk, and there's an occasional bit of advice thrown in, but there's no real focus on measuring anything or using tangible techniques or psychotherapy homework to help the person change his or her life. And I was a little reluctant about publishing that because I didn't want to sound overly negative or critical, but I do, when I'm being my honest self, I do have tremendous criticisms of the field, and I think the field is not in good shape and needs to go through massive changes. But at any rate, Bernie, wonderful Bernie, who's probably with us here. Yes, he is.
Yeah, he is.
Hi, David. Quick comment on codependent schmoozing. You were spot on with everything. Thank you for that, Bernie. I would add that it's not just the corruptible and lazy factors that drive some therapists. And by that, I mean, if you just patients come and talk to you and you're a therapist and they just want to talk, and if it's a full fee private pay patient, and you give in to that, and you just listen and schmooze with them, the patient's going to love it. They're not going to change, and they're going to be coming to see you indefinitely. And that's what I mean by corruption, that therapists get sucked into that. And it's easy to learn how to do codependent schmoozing, and you can be paid for it, but you're not changing human beings, in my opinion, when you do that. But at any rate, Bernie says that most therapists who practice this way are probably honestly convinced that this is what works best, or at least that's all that can be done, especially with, quote, resistant clients. Good point, Bernie. Some therapists are truly stuck and don't know what to do, and they don't know what methods to try, or they don't have the skill, to apply some of these new methods skillfully, and that is so true. He says, I completely agree with the poor skill level, your poor skill level comment about most therapists. When I hear some of what my colleagues are doing, I'm now dumbfounded. And I confess, in spite of the many years of training in CBT, that's cognitive behavior therapy, I was also often wasting time because I was not using the team approach and not using it skillfully. Even now, as I continue to work the team way, I catch myself sometimes helping people, and helping is in quotes, helping before agenda setting, and later regret how deficient my empathy was, despite how motivated I am and how sold I am on team. Like you say, David, you make it look easy, but the methods and approach are often quite sophisticated and hard to learn for many therapists, I think. Thanks, and looking forward to today's Facebook Live. Well, thank you for that, Bernie, and we're certainly on the same page there. And when you folks write in and make comments or criticisms or suggestions, this is incredibly helpful. Now I'm going to write a letter I got in the U.S. mail, so I can't give it an email response, and let me see where it's from. It's from Sarasota, Florida. I won't name the person because I don't have permission to use her name, but she wrote a really beautifully stated letter, to be honest. And Lisa, you'll identify with Lisa Kelly. You'll like this letter. Dear Dr. Burns, I want to begin by telling you that I enjoyed many of your Feeling Good podcasts. They're educational, full of ideas, and enjoyable to listen to. I particularly like your use of case examples to help demonstrate some of your methods. I'm a licensed mental health counselor and have been counseling patients for almost 18 years. Your podcast motivated me to learn more about team CBT. So far, so good. And when you're giving criticism to someone, if you combine it with some warmth and some admiration and respect, we call that stroking. It certainly helps a lot. I recently listened to your podcast with your patient Marilyn, episode number 50. And if any of you haven't heard the work with Marilyn, starting with podcast number 50, I think there were 3 or 4 of my therapy with a dear colleague, Marilyn, who had just been diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, and she was totally freaked out and depressed and terrified. My co-therapist was my former student and now esteemed colleague, Dr. Matt May. And it was a really moving and Lisa said, don't go over the top. But if I did go over the top, I'd say it was an incredibly mind-blowing and amazing and inspiring session. Her depression entirely disappeared. So this letter goes on. While I thought the sessions with her were very instructive, I was taken back at your insertion of sarcastic political remarks, and particularly your comments about Trump protecting us and Trumpian arrogance. I did not expect these gratuitous remarks during a counseling session. And those remarks, I think, were in no way disturbing to Marilyn, who we had a fantastic session with, but to this viewer, and I wasn't thinking about viewers who might be offended by hostile or sarcastic jabs at Donald Trump, our president. And then she goes on to say she was thinking of joining an online group to further her learning. Now she's having doubts about that, wondering if she'll feel comfortable in such a group. particularly if one is expected to go along with certain political views. I noticed that others on the podcast, Fabrice and Matt, both laughed at your remarks, perhaps because they agreed or perhaps out of nervousness. At any rate, you are the role model and the one who helped set the tone, and that is so true. I was disappointed on another level. Until I listened to episode 50, I had considered you to be a very professional person. This helped to give credibility to your ideas. Your gratuitous political remarks to me have no place in a therapy session, and even with someone you know, the fact that you were taping the episode, that you verbally excused yourself after making the remarks, made the error seem all the more glaring to me. Perhaps it's difficult for you to perceive that there are many good, moral, loving persons who support President Trump and feel they have good reasons to. And then she goes on to point out that almost all people have biases, even those who were kind of anti-Trumpian, and gives examples of that, and then says, I'm curious as to whether you addressed this faux pas with your audience. Perhaps you addressed it in a subsequent podcast. We all make mistakes. I think it's a matter of how we respond to them that matters. In closing, Marilyn was very generous in sharing her story. I'm sure she touched many people which she did. And so that my response here is to use respect and disarming technique. And I just have to plead guilty as charged there. Not only did I sarcastically put down Trump, but I have a lot of anger toward Trump and feel that he's not a good person to have as president. I don't share his vision for America, and I think a lot of his actions are pretty horrible, and is the things that he does. But that's not an excuse to play the same game and treat him or anyone in a disrespectful way. I mean, Nelson Mandela showed us how to change a political system that you think is sadistic and corrupt and horrible by treating people with respect. And who was the guy who did the same for India?
You're thinking of Gandhi.
Yeah, Gandhi, the same way, treated people with respect. And so I have to say, not only, are you right that I did do that? I actually enjoyed doing that. I enjoy making those sarcastic, hostile comments. There's a part of human nature that wants to lash out when we're angry with someone and when we're frustrated. And when you do that, you just create further discord. So I greatly appreciate your note, and will try to express my views in a more respectful way. I do think we all have a voice that we can express, and I'm very hopeful our nation will move politically in a different direction and not continue down the road we're going down right now. And I would encourage everyone, whatever pulpit you have or whatever your voice that you have, to express your dissent and your vision for America and your feelings, but to do so with respect and not with arrogance or mean-spiritedness or hostility. So that's my response. And how did I do, Mike?
I think you did pretty well, and I think it sort of highlights how there's sometimes resistance to doing kind of disarming, in the sense that if we don't want to kind of connect, it can be a little bit more difficult. At the same time, there's that we all do have our biases. She was completely right. We get kind of caught in our biases, and I'm right on board with her. And sometimes we go a little beyond in our humor with our biases.
Sure. But how did I do? Did I get an A, a B, a C? Were there some part that worked, part that didn't work?
Well, I think the part that was an A, when you were agreeing with her that you did in fact kind of attack in that way. The one part I thought of could have been a little bit stronger was where she'd said, there's some of us that are real Trump supporters who are really loving, caring, gentle, warm, amazing people. And just because we have that bias doesn't necessarily mean we would react in that way as well. And I thought, oh yeah, she sounds like somebody who kind of shares that same vision as you and I for how we'd like people to be treated with respect. And
Oh yeah, absolutely, yes. And I would say to her, you come across to me like a very warm, loving person. Absolutely, and my hat's off to you writing a letter like this. I think is just showing something at the highest possible level. Is that better?
yeah, that was working for me. Kind of felt like, hey, we're joining forces here. We're all in the same
Yeah,
team.
yeah, right, right. Okay, well, we've got some nice examples here, and we've got some good teaching points. Why don't you direct us a little bit, Mike? What direction should we do next? Mike has a fabulous little manifesto he wrote on disarming technique errors, emotional barriers to the disarming technique, and then we have some really good example. We've got a teenage bullying one, and a lot of husband to wife, wife to husband, mom to therapist, sexual provocative comments that occur in the context of therapy. Where should we start out here, Mike?
Well, first, a huge shout out to Jill. A lot of this kind of material is from her brilliant teaching, and she will be back next week, I understand. So we can get back to her. I think we should dive into some examples, and then maybe we can look at what, or perhaps some of the hurdles that get in the way a little bit later on. How does that sound?
Sounds great. Great. I was just looking at the
comments.
Yeah, we get a lot of activity now. That's great to see. I got some A's and A minuses. That's kind comments. So that's great. And if you get your ego out of it, it's just so much easier. If you think you have a self to defend, you go kind of down the toilet. So are we going to do the points or the examples now?
Well, why don't we dive into the examples, and then we can look
Okay.
at the points after, and then when
Okay.
I make a few errors, we can point out the
Okay.
errors that I made. How does that
Now,
sound?
that's great. Now, here's someone that gave a husband said this to a wife. So I'll be the husband, and you can be the wife, and show us how to use the disarming technique. And now, again, when you use the disarming technique, you can use the other 5 secrets if you like. You don't want to be mechanical, so you can do an I feel statement showing how you feel. You can do stroking, showing warmth and respect for the other person. You can do thought and feeling empathy, acknowledging the person's feelings. You can do inquiry, asking for more information. Any of those that you need, you can use. But here I am. I'm the husband saying to my wife, "You're incapable of change."
Oh,
And before we do it, let's just say that
yeah,
if you're the husband, you're thinking, well, that's not true because I've changed in 10 billion ways since I was born. So on some level, the comment is rubbish. But if you give in to that tendency to argue and defend yourself, you're going to go down the drain. So you have to figure out, what is the truth? What is this person trying to tell me? So let's hear how Mike responds.
So this is the wife responding and maybe feeling defensive, but at the same time trying to use the five secrets with disarming. So I might say, wow, it's hard actually for me to hear that when you said I'm incapable of change. The reason it's so hard is because I realized when you said it actually is completely true. I've been responding to you in this defensive way and kind of arguing and trying to be helpful. And in fact, I've been doing the same thing over and over and over again, and I'm not changing. And it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks when you said that, because I feel kind of embarrassed and badly. You deserve better than that from me. Tell me how you've been experiencing the way that I respond when you're trying to communicate with me.
That's good. I give you like a real strong A minus on that. What is one emotion that no therapist in the United States has ever acknowledged? Isn't that interesting?
Anger, of course. The
Yeah.
husband is ticked off at the wife, and as the wife completely missed out on that one. And
Yeah.
that's part of the disarming as well, is making sure you're touching on the emotion.
Yeah. And so you gave me some helpful feedback, and so some feeling empathy. thought and feeling empathy could be really great. You're saying, sweetheart, that I'm incapable of change, and wow, it's so painful to hear that, and I wouldn't be a bit surprised if you're feeling frustrated, uh, probably a bit or very angry with me, and maybe a bit sad and lonely too. And then go on with the other stuff that you said. Just say this is absolutely right. I've been getting defensive. I've been blaming you. I've been doing the same thing over and over again, and it's I'm ashamed right now because you just hit me like a ton of bricks that your criticism is true, and I feel so sad to suddenly realize I've been doing that to you. Tell me more about it. Tell me what it's been like for you. How's that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. As soon as you acknowledge that anger right off the top, then it sets the plate, sets the tone for the rest.
Right. Now, to make a teaching point out of this, you and I both demonstrated agreeing that we're incapable of change, right?
Yeah.
And then what will the husband conclude?
Well, in fact, that you have changed in that moment.
Yeah.
In that exact experience.
Yeah. By agreeing
changed.
that you can't change, you're proving that you can change because you are changing, and they will suddenly experience you as someone who's very flexible and open.
Yes,
rather than someone who's rigid, defensive, argumentative, and stubborn, and that's the law of opposites. Now, before we give another example on the other side of this beautiful summary thing here that you created, should we give some reasons why someone might not want to respond like this?
Yeah, that's really when you asked what topic should we look at, I thought, there's often times when I don't want to use the disarming technique or various other factors.
Yeah, go over to the upper right-hand corner, emotional barriers to using the disarming technique skillfully. Maybe we can post this somewhere, and Lisa could give a link to it if people want to read this, the beautiful summary you made. Pride and shame, we want to avoid the death of the ego. See, that's what's involved. To say that the other person is right, that hurts the feeling. See, here I'm supposed to be Mr. Guru, and then I get this letter saying how screwed up I am, and the letter is absolutely true. Do you see? Because it was doubly bad. Not only was I hostile and sarcastic, I was feeling morally superior and taking great joy and being sarcastic. And that's the dark side of human nature that everyone tries to deny. Everyone tries to pretend like we're saints, and we're not. There's a part of us that wants love, and there's a part of us that wants to lash out when we're feeling hurt or angry or frustrated. And then I had to acknowledge I'm not so much of a guru, and I do screw up frequently. Lisa knows that it's very rare for me to screw up. No, I've been under a lot of attack lately, and all the attacks have been valid, and it's easy to get your ego wanting to defend itself.
Yeah, and that one's number one every time. The next one we have on the list is the defensiveness, and I would say this one always follows right in behind that ego, and that's where our identity or our sense of kind of who we are is threatened by the other person, by their criticism. They're implying that we're somehow defective or incompetent or not sufficiently kind of caring, and then we rise up and get defensive.
Yeah, and because when they say we're not professional, see, this one was saying I wasn't professional. Well, does David want to admit he's not being professional?
No.
Do you see what I mean? But when the person says you're not being professional or you're not being caring, it's true what they're saying. And so we want to defend ourselves. And then if I were to defend myself from this woman and get sarcastic with this woman, it would be just proving how right she is.
Yeah, you're just throwing more mud into the wind that's hitting you in the face.
Yeah. Well, let's try another one, and then we'll talk more about the resistances we all have. This is wife to husband. Why don't you be the wife and I'll be the husband, and we'll put David.
Put David on the spot.
Yeah,
sounds good. So I'm the wife here. I can't believe you compared your business deal that fell through to the abuse my mom had experienced from my dad. Interacting with you is worse than the beatings we got when he was drunk. You are just like my dad.
Well, it's incredibly painful to hear what you're saying. It really hurts me to the core, because you're saying that interacting with me is worse than the beatings you got when you were growing up from your drunk father, who abused you and abused your mom. He'd get drunk and be cruel, and you say, I've been just like that, and I think what you're saying is true, that I haven't been treating you with warmth and with respect, and I've been kind of crabby and frustrated, perhaps a bit intimidating, and I feel so ashamed, because not only have I been doing that, I didn't even realize it until you just pointed it out. And I love you so much, and that makes my pain all the more intense. But I wouldn't be surprised if you're feeling anxious and angry and hurt and betrayed and incredibly lonely and discouraged. And as awful as it is, I appreciate your telling me this. And if you're willing to be courageous and keep talking, I want to hear more about it and the things I've done or said that have hurt you, and what it's been like for you. And I believe this conversation, this talk, is going to be very hard, but it's going to bring us so much closer together. That's my hope. With that in mind, can you tell me more? What you're saying is just incredibly important. How was that?
I'd have to give you an A plus on that one. There was, boy, a lot of gold in there. I would say that the first part was just that pure disarm. What you're saying is true, and then you were specific about what you're saying is true. I've been coming across as kind of crabby, and then when you said the word intimidating, I thought, that was it. That was the part that was 100% that disarm, and suddenly you weren't intimidating anymore. The other parts that were really powerful were the I feel statements. I just feel I can't read my own writing here. Ashamed and sad and devastated.
Yeah.
And then the feeling empathy, and you must be feeling anxious, and aware. Those were the three parts: the disarm and the feeling and I feels really cut to the core.
Yeah.
And then finally the inquiry.
Yeah. Yeah, to open it up, to tell me more about that, but we don't want to do that because we don't want to hear the bad news. And this comes to another one of the resistances that you put on your list here, that we could. Why don't we do this? Why don't we want to do this? And another one is fear.
Yeah.
We think that something bad will happen. It'll escalate. We'll have a lawsuit if we agree with an angry patient. People will start gossiping about us. If we agree with a patient or a family member or anyone who's angry and critical of us. And that's another thing. There's a tremendous fear of admitting the truth in someone's criticism. I once treated one of America's top malpractice attorneys, and he actually specialized in treating and suing these large corporations, and he would bring them to his knees single-handedly, who were doing like environmental corruption and stuff. But he also specialized in suing doctors. And he had virtually never lost a case against a medical malpractice suit. He was just ruthless in court. And I asked him about this. If we agree with our patients who criticize us and rip us to shreds sometimes, we say they're true, will they sue us? Is this a poor strategy? Should we defend ourselves? And some of you have heard this before. I've mentioned it in workshops, but I never forgot what he told me. And he said that patients rarely sue doctors for malpractice. They sue for another reason. That's the doctor wouldn't listen.
Yeah.
And he said, if the therapists who come to your workshops really took this to heart and started disarming the people who are critical of them, including patients, he said you'd never get sued. And if you ever did get sued and you were on the witness stand and some attorney's trying to cross-examine you and make you look like a monkey or like a criminal, and that you use stroking and disarming and respond with respect and openness and find truth in the criticisms, he says a jury would never in a million years convict you. You'd win every suit. So I thought that was good. But it's not only the fear that our patients will criticize us if we agree that we failed them or made some mistake. We fear that our family members will abandon us and will turn against us and decide that we're no good. There is a tremendous amount of fear that prevents us from embracing criticism.
One of the comments that I've heard from patients is, well, if I agree with them, then won't they use that against me? Which is that fear part kind of rising up.
Yeah. Now we're getting some good comments. A lot of response today. Dave, Sean Stiller, Dave, there is research on this exact point. That would be great if you send it. I can maybe put it in a blog and share it with people or share it with my Stanford training group. Kathy Leffler, I read that excessive anger is a disorder. Oops. Yeah, I'm just going by what I've read. I'm not suggesting that I agree with this. Well, excessive anger can be a part of bipolar disorder. We often think of bipolar manic depression as being high and then depressed, but part of the highness can sometimes be an expression of anger. But or someone can be paranoid and psychotically and enraged, but still, when you're interacting with someone, even if the anger can be an expression too of intoxication or withdrawal or chronic intoxication with amphetamines or cocaine or something of that type. But still, when you respond with someone who's excessively angry, stroking and disarming are your most powerful and effective tools for sure. And Lisa says that fear can prevent us from embracing criticism, and that is so true. I mean, you just said it so clearly. I can't add to it except that you're 200% right, and I think we all experience that. Natalie says a great job. Only thing I would add would be thought empathy, agreeing that the business deal. Oh yeah, that's a great thing. Yes, my business deal is nothing compared to what you experienced, and you have every right to be enraged with me for making such a stupid comparison of that. And
great pickup, Natalie.
Yeah, TJ Lucian says, "Gotta be." Said it's a super tough one though. But Ron gave me a solid A, and Bernie an A+. And Julie says A, he's genuine and compassionate. But if someone is giving you a B, then get the information, like you gave me information of what I missed, and that was a really good point.
Like Natalie did.
Yeah. And we both have done that for each other. And it's only when you generalize that you get pain. If you say, "Oh, David, you could have used thought empathy." Oh, yeah, that's a good point. That makes me excited. Yes, I forgot thought empathy, and that's another great tool not to forget. But what the problem, and Sean Dooley says, the death of the ego is the hardest part. You see, we think that that if we agree that we have failed in some way, that we're a failure, that we're unlovable, that we're bad. It's that distortion in your own thinking that's what makes it so hard. And Raul Marcano, to accept criticism is devastating for those who base their self-esteem on the acceptance of others. Absolutely. And then if you fear disapproval, you'll get defensive. And then they will reject you. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And what a great comment you made. Should we do another one now, and then we'll make another point?
Sure, that sounds great. I'd like to get to the question about what about somebody who's being abusive.
Oh,
I know that
where is that one now?
that's
Is
just
that
that was a question that I had on my list that often comes up. Say, well, you can't do that with somebody who's abusive. You need to set boundaries and that sort of thing, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah. The
But I wonder if
problem
we have
is,
an example.
yeah. The do we have examples or?
Well, I guess it's partially in that one with the teenager,
Right,
right?
let's come back to that. Let's
Sibling.
stick with what we're doing here because the teenagers
Perfect.
could be a little more challenging for us. But yes, you definitely want to do this with someone who's abusive, more so with someone who's abusive, because the reason they're abusive probably is because they don't feel listened to, because they are ticked off at people. And if you stroke and agree with someone who's being abusive, I've given examples of that on this show of how you people have used these techniques even with serial killers and save their life and transform the experience. But let's go from the theoretical to the practical. This is mom to a therapist, and I'll be mom now. Okay,
Okay. Now this is a tough one.
and you're the therapist, so this is a therapist criticism. Um, my husband and I are really upset with you. You told our daughter, which actually you hadn't, that she's depressed and anxious. This is exactly what I was afraid of. I brought her to you because I thought you knew what I wanted. I'm not bringing her back to see you. Well, that's a terrific one. That's a real example, Mike.
That was from one of the therapists that had responded to our email invite for
Oh,
questions.
okay, great. Oh, yeah. So the therapist is saying, "Here's a false criticism. How can we agree with it?" Great, perfect. And you will now show us.
So you might say, "Wow, I'm feeling boy a little unsure how to respond. What you're telling me is that you and your husband are super upset with me, and your daughter had been given the impression that she's depressed and anxious, and that's exactly what you were afraid of. And you brought her here because you thought I knew what you wanted, and I'm imagining you're feeling pretty frustrated and disappointed and even angry with me right now. And I actually have to agree with you completely. I'm kind of disappointed here as well. It seems like I've really missed the boat with your daughter. You have this kind of passion, desire to get her the best treatment possible, and we haven't done that. And then you're also saying that you're not going to bring her back to see me. And while I'm saddened to hear that, if I was in your shoes, I have to say that I'd be right on the same page with you. I'm wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about whether I'm getting it here, or I'm understanding what you're saying.
That's good. I'd give you an A, leaning toward an A minus, but definitely strong. Uh, there was a piece that to add a little stroking, a little stronger inquiry at the end. Just say, I although it's painful to hear that I've missed the boat and didn't connect with you initially or read you well, I'm very grateful and honored really that you would come back to share these thoughts with me and let me know where I had missed the boat. And I'm wondering if you could tell me more about that. I know you love your daughter greatly, and I'd like to hear what's been going on and how you read the situation and what kind of changes you're hoping to see for her, and tell me more about how I have missed the boat with you. How would that be for
Yeah,
closure?
I love that. There was a stronger clarity on the I feel, the feeling, empathy, and also on the inquiry. All three of those pieces were just more clear, more strong, more accurate,
Yeah.
less vague.
Yes, right. Bernie gave you a B plus there.
Oh,
So
awesome.
how does that feel to get a B plus, Mr. Expert?
Well, I'd have to agree with the B plus completely because I didn't feel like it was an A, and I'd love to hear the tips on what parts didn't work. What could take it to that A or that A plus? If those get typed into the box, boy, I'd
Yeah.
learn from those as well.
Right, right. But how did you feel? You notice you didn't answer my question.
Oh yeah. There's a part of me that's kind of excited because I have struggled at times with the disarming technique and wanted to improve. The other time, it's humbling. I'd like to get an A+ every time. It's hard, a little hard on the ego.
Right. Okay. Well, I'll tell you how I feel because I've still not necessarily heard the feelings, but when I get a strong criticism, I sometimes feel ashamed and kind of embarrassed and sad and a bit humiliated uh, because I think we have this ideal view of ourselves, and then you get the reality of how you've screwed up, and it kind of brings you to your knees. And that's why this is such a challenging technique and a spiritual technique, because we don't like to feel negative emotions. And Yeah, Bernie was saying for Mike to say, tell me more. And I'm hoping we can work this through when I learn more about your ideas. That's a good one. And TJ Lucian says a lot of your responses just repeating verbatim when she said, Sean gave you an A minus, and I liked it because you're opening up the conversation. And Dave, are you still teaching the idea of finding the grain of truth? Yes, absolutely. That's the whole point of this, is to see the truth and what the person is saying, even when you think it's not true, because there always is truth. Well, should we do the teenager and then get on to the advanced calculus?
Yeah, that sounds good.
This one is tough because this is someone who is teaching a teenager, I'm not teaching, but treating a teenager who had an older sister who was bullying him. And since he's not here, it's a little hard because we don't know if he's asking for help. I think they got involved in family therapy, and the older sister was scolded, and the parents confirmed that she did pick on this 17-year-old kid, who I guess the older sister had been kind of mean to him, and probably hitting him and saying mean things to him. And so I can't promote myself as a super expert in how to handle bullies. I think it's a horrible problem that angers me, to be honest. But you actually can use stroking and disarming. And one of the things that the older sister was saying to him, it was, you're such an idiot. So whose turn is? I think it's my turn to be the.
Yes.
So I'll be the younger kid, and if I get a C or a D on this one, no problem. We'll get feedback from both of you. On TJ Lucian, let me congratulate you both on being willing to accept ratings from strangers on the internet, putting your ego to the test. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So anyway, you're my older sister.
Well, you were just such an idiot.
I feel like a bit of an idiot right now because I really love you, and then we end up clashing all the time, and I think you criticize me a lot because your criticisms are true and valid, and I screw up a lot, and it's especially, it wouldn't be so painful for me if I didn't love you so much. I've always wanted to be closer to you, and I think you're really neat. I admire so much about you, but then I feel kind of hurt and angry sometimes, and then I get to defending myself, and we battle. But I think you're really neat, and maybe you can tell me some of the times lately that I've been an idiot. I'd appreciate hearing from you what the things I say and how you feel. It sounds like maybe you're feeling really frustrated with me, or ashamed of me, or angry with me. Is that right? Can you tell me a bit more about this? How's that?
Okay, I'm just writing down. That was solid. I would say solid A as well. Really, with the disarming technique, especially, I feel like a bit of an idiot, and I think what you're saying is absolutely true. Those parts I really liked. The part that wasn't working for me as well was the initial stroking part, because I was wondering if he really was loving her in that moment.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's a good one. Maybe just say I'm really pissed at you right now, but I've always loved you and wanted to be closer to you, and so it hurts me a lot when we fight like this. Is that better?
Yeah, that seemed more genuine, right?
Yeah,
At first, and I think that's one of the keys with disarming that we can sometimes miss, is that genuine part is
yeah,
so key. I think that would take it to the A+ for me, is in that
yeah,
stroking. Love to hear
yeah.
the other comments from people in the chat box.
We're not getting them. Oh, Bernie says, sounds good to me so far. Okay, great. Now I got another one that was from, and I'm mad at myself for losing the email. I got a bunch of great emails, and I put them somewhere in my filing system on Microsoft Outlook, and then this morning and yesterday I couldn't find them, but I can remember one that's very good, and we can role play it. This was a fellow. I think it was from a fellow who had just moved to a bigger organization, a bigger corporation. I think his smaller company had been bought out by some bigger company, and then he was put in some fairly senior position, and he beat out some woman who was competing for his job, but he got the job. And he says that she's relentlessly critical of him, and he gave examples of how he was trying to disarm her and it didn't work.
Oh, okay.
And for example, he gave a talk to the people in the company, and he had to present figures and graphs, and there was some number that was way off. It was somehow incorrect, and so she was jabbing at him after the presentation and saying, "Oh boy, you sure got that number wrong." So she's probably kind of jealous and trying to belittle him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he started saying, disarming like this, well, yes, I did get it wrong, but I had actually delegated that to several people because before the talk, and they weren't able to come up with any information indicating that it wasn't correct. And then she would say something like that, well, you shouldn't be delegating things like that in your position. That's your responsibility. And then she'd go off and gossip to someone else. And he said, I'm pretty sure they were talking about me. So what he's doing here, he thinks this is disarming, but it's not. He's subtly defending himself. And I think what he needs to do is use a stroking and disarming. And why don't you be her, and I'll model exactly what I have in mind.
Sounds
but again,
good.
he has to give up the expectation in his mind that she's going to be better than she is. He has to decide he's going to handle her rather than trying for some deep connection with her. And what I'm going to say will sound a little manipulative, and I believe it is, as the Buddha said, and Jesus repeated it too, sometimes it's really important to manipulate people. It's the spiritually correct thing to do. But anyway, we'll see. We'll see if this holds up. But you can be her.
You know, in your presentation today, the statistics that you came up with, that was wrong. I can't believe you included that in your presentation. That was way off base.
Well, I appreciate your telling me that. To tell you the truth, I've heard a lot of your presentations, and they're blow away. I can learn a lot from you, and I was kind of embarrassed that I didn't get correct that error. But I want you to know that it helps me a lot when you criticize me, because most people, they just blow smoke in my face. They say, "Oh, you had a great presentation today," and you're the only one I know who really tells it like it is. And if you would keep doing that, and let me know when I'm screwing up, I would so much appreciate it. In fact, I'm viewing you as a kind of potential mentor, and I just want to tell you that. How's that?
I'm just, it is so disarming. Like, it feels, I'm feeling like $1,000,000 here. I just criticized you, and I was looking for a fight.
Yeah, exactly.
Now I'm kind of excited about being part of the team.
Yeah. Yeah, right. I'm glad you like that. Yeah, because people like this, she probably feels hurt that she didn't get the position. So she's trying to tear him down. And then if he defends himself, that will intensify her attack. And yeah, on the other hand, if he strokes her and lets her know how great she is, that'll feed her ego. And she'll very likely, calm down. And then if, he could even do it in a meeting. If she attacks him in a meeting, he
Yeah.
could say, that's a great point that you're making. Thank you so much. You're 200% right on that. I just learned something important from you. And then if she keeps attacking him, she'll make herself look bad.
Yeah.
So, okay, now are we ready to go on to the calculus? Oh, it's 3:55. We only have 5 minutes left. Well, I'm going to do one that's impossibly difficult, and Mike's going to have to model it. The hardest one for therapists is when a sexual issue comes up in therapy. And so you're going to be, you want to be the male therapist with a female patient, or do you want to be the female therapist with a male patient? We got two sexually provocative comments here.
I don't want to be either, but I'll do the male patient, the male therapist. How does that sound?
I'm a female patient, and this case actually came up on the way back from Whistler. I got a ride from two people. One was Mike, who did the video for us in Whistler, and the other, remember Chris? He was an ethics expert at Whistler. And so we had a lot of fun because this case came up that's very, very similar. One of the therapists has a female patient who's putting moves on him and making him very uncomfortable. And so I'm your female patient. And Mike, I've been thinking about you all week, and I know you've been thinking about me too.
Wow, I'm feeling a little awkward right now, and even a little cautious in how I respond. And the reason for that is because I want to make sure I'm treating you with the utmost of respect, the kind that you deserve. And when you said that you've been thinking about me all week, and this impression that I've been thinking about you all week, my sense is that there's this connection that you're experiencing between us. And there are times in therapy when it can be very vulnerable, and at the same time, I'd be very hesitant to be sending you the wrong message. You deserve to be treated with the most respect, and it sounds like there's a dynamic going on between us. I'm avoiding, aren't I?
Yeah. When you start repeating yourself, as the Buddha said, you're in deep shit. So you deserve respect 3 more times. This is tough, and you're doing great.
Tough one. And yeah, I'm drawing a blank on this one right now. It's surprising to many that I don't get these kinds of things all the time in my office. The way I look, but. Yeah.
Well, these are the toughest ones, and I'll take a stab at it. Maybe we could pick this up in a future podcast, because this isn't taught in graduate school classes, and but it's something that can be learned. But it might be saying something like, "Yeah, you say you've been thinking about me all week, and you're pretty sure that I've been thinking about you." And I can imagine it was really hard for you to say that right now. One of the issues that brought you to therapy is love and sex and romance, and that you haven't been able to connect with men and to get the love you deserve and that you need. And I can imagine it was tough right now to say that and to make yourself vulnerable. And I'm proud of you for having the courage to say that. And my goal in therapy is not to develop a romantic relationship with you, but to help you find the love that you want in your life. And one of the issues that you've talked about is that you're always connecting and falling in love with men who are kind of unavailable and then ending up getting hurt. And I can imagine that this conversation right now takes a lot of courage, and maybe we can slay that dragon and help you turn this problem around. Tell me how you're feeling right now, and what is this like for you, and also what are some things about this relationship that makes you feel loving and safe. Maybe we're finding out what some of the things that you're looking for in a loving relationship. Tell me more how you're feeling just at this moment. How's that?
Yeah, I really like that. I like bringing it into the here and now, the dynamic that's actually happening, and then also that tremendous amount of affirmation for what the client is looking for.
Yeah.
And that's the disarming part, like agreeing with that part of it, because people are looking for love and connection and depth. And as therapists, when we do listen to them, sometimes that's the thing that they've been so longing for, is to be heard, to be listened to be cared for.
Yeah. Well, we're getting all kinds of enthusiastic responses here, but we've got to cut off. And I did have my one commercial message that I promised Lisa Kelly I would save for the end. Oh, here it is, right here. And that if any of you are interested in attending an intensive, the last one of this year will be coming up in August here at the South San Francisco Conference Center. It's from August 6th to 9th, 2018. It's a 4-day intensive. We'll have 2 evening sessions. I'll be doing a live demonstration with my esteemed colleague Jill Levitt on the evening of day 1, and there'll be tons of people from my Stanford Tuesday training group available to provide feedback, and I'll be providing feedback individually to you when you do the small group exercises. It's usually the best workshop of the year. And so if you're interested, you can go call 1-800-258-8411. That's 1-800-258-8411 for registration information. Or you can just go to my website, feelinggood.com, and go to my workshop tab. Click on that, and then you'll find the link to the registration information for the summer intensive at the South San Francisco Conference Center, August 6th to 9th, 2018. Hope to see you there, and thank you, Mike, for I just loved working with you today, and I think we both made ourselves kind of vulnerable.
Yeah, it was awesome fun, and certainly it's just such a privilege to hang out with you. And just a final shout out as well, if people wanted to do more learning on this, then the podcasts 14 and 15, number 36, 54, 57, all are fantastic, with the 5 secrets, and take it to the next level.
And one last thing, earlier this week on Monday, let me see what date that was. Monday, the 9th, was the first of 3 fantastic, slightly above average broadcasts. I'm working with Jill and a fellow from England, Lee, who has a marital conflict, and we treated him in one single session and pretty much resolved his problem. And it's broken into 3 podcasts with commentary. It's a live actual therapy session of the interpersonal team model, of which the disarming technique, of course, is an important part of that. And so if you're a therapist or a general public person and you want to hear about this new interpersonal model for treating marital problems or relationship problems, it's really a tremendous amount of to learn, and when you see it happening with a real person, not a fake, not role play, happening before your very eyes, there's tears, there's the death of the ego, and then following the death, there's the fantastic rebirth, this individual experience. So that's another great resource for you. So thank you, everybody. Have a very great Sunday, and thank you for joining us, and thank you for such lovely and heartwarming and kindly feedback today. And thank you, Lisa Kelly, for everything you're doing for all of us to make all of these great programs available and help us get the word out about TEAM.
And Jill will be back next week, I understand. Is that right?
Yeah, I'll be broadcasting with Jill Levitt next Sunday afternoon on should statements, the tyranny of the shoulds, and how to overcome should statements, the so-called shouldy approach to life. Okay, bye-bye.
Take care.